The air in the subterranean archive of the Cairo Museum is thick with the scent of dry papyrus and time itself. It's a silence that isn't empty, but full of whispers from millennia past. Here, far from the sun-scorched Giza Plateau, a paleographer leans over a climate-controlled light table. Her gloved fingers, with the reverence of a priestess, trace the delicate ink-drawn lines on fragments of papyrus. This is a copy of the Book of the Dead, specifically the Papyrus of Ani, a scribe's meticulously prepared guide for the afterlife, dating back to around 1250 BCE. This isn't a single book, but a collection of spells, hymns, and instructions, a spiritual roadmap for the soul's perilous journey through the underworld, the Duat. Its purpose was to ensure a successful passage to the Field of Reeds, the Egyptian paradise. But within its intricate hieroglyphs, nestled in the 125th spell, is something that stops the modern reader cold. It is a moment of judgment, a scene where the deceased stands before 42 divine assessors and the god Osiris. To prove their worth, they must address each deity and declare their innocence of a specific transgression. This is the negative confession. The soul's voice, channeled through the ancient script, speaks with an unnerving clarity across 3,000 years. I have not committed sin. I have not committed robbery with violence. I have not stolen. I have not slain men and women. I have not uttered lies. I have not carried away food. I have not uttered curses. I have not committed adultery. The list goes on, a comprehensive moral inventory of a righteous life. For anyone familiar with the Judeo-Christian tradition, these declarations are more than just ancient ethics. They are haunting echoes. They resonate with the thunderous pronouncements from Mount Sinai, where a newly freed people received a divine law that would shape the moral bedrock of Western civilization. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not commit adultery. The parallels are immediate, striking, and deeply challenging. For centuries, the Ten Commandments, the Decalogue, have been understood as a moment of pure, unmediated divine revelation, a radical break from the pagan world. The narrative is one of the most powerful in religious history. Moses ascending a smoke-wreathed mountain, communing directly with the one true God, and returning with a covenant etched by a divine finger onto stone tablets. This was not a philosophy or a set of wise proverbs. It was law, absolute and unique. It was the foundation of a new relationship between humanity and the divine, a covenant that set the Israelites apart from all other nations, especially from their recent enslavers in Egypt. Yet, here in the quiet of the archive, the papyrus tells a different story, or at least a more complicated one. The chronology is undeniable. The core texts of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, including Spell 125, predate the traditional dating of the Exodus by centuries. The ethical principles that the Israelites would receive as a singular revelation were already part of the spiritual and moral vocabulary of the very empire they were said to have fled. This wasn't a fringe belief. It was central to the Egyptian understanding of justice, cosmic order, and salvation. The concept of Ma'at, the divine principle of truth, balance, and righteousness, often personified as a goddess with an ostrich feather, was the organizing force of the Egyptian universe. To live in accordance with Ma'at was the goal of earthly existence, and the negative confession was the final testament to having achieved it. This historical fact creates a profound tension. It pits the sacred narrative of a unique, isolated revelation against the archival evidence of deep-seated cultural and ethical continuity. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. If the moral content of the Ten Commandments was not entirely new, what does that mean for their divine origin? Was the voice that thundered from Sinai echoing sentiments that had long been whispered in the tombs of the pharaohs? This isn't merely an academic puzzle about historical influence. It strikes at the very heart of how we understand the nature of Scripture, the process of revelation, and the relationship between faith and history. The discovery doesn't necessarily erase the sacred, but it undeniably complicates it, suggesting that the divine voice may speak through the language and concepts of the culture it is addressing. It forces a shift from viewing the commandments as a sudden lightning strike of moral genius to seeing them as a brilliant, revolutionary reforging of existing ethical materials. What then was the purpose of this reforging? If the principles were already known, what made the Mosaic version so transformative that it would alter the course of human history? Building on the striking parallels found in the Egyptian negative confession, we must now journey back in time, not to a sterile archive, but to the vibrant, syncretic world of the Nile Delta. Imagine the land of Goshen, where, according to the biblical narrative, the Israelites lived for generations. They were not a people in a vacuum. They were a Semitic minority immersed in one of the most powerful and culturally sophisticated civilizations of the ancient world. They would have seen the towering temples, witnessed the elaborate funerary processions, and absorbed the ambient spiritual beliefs that saturated daily life. They would have known of Ma'at, the feather of truth, and the all-important judgment that awaited every soul, from the pharaoh to the farmer. The ethical framework of their Egyptian neighbors was not a secret doctrine. It was the very air they breathed. It is in this context of prolonged cultural contact that the connections between the two codes become not just plausible, but almost inevitable. Let's place them side by side. The Book of the Dead, spell 125, proclaims, "I have not slain man or woman." The Book of Exodus, chapter 20, commands, "Thou shalt not kill." The Egyptian text states, "I have not committed robbery." The Hebrew text commands, "Thou shalt not steal." The deceased Egyptian asserts, "I have not spoken lies." The Israelite is commanded, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." The parallels continue. Prohibitions against adultery, coveting another's property, and even disrespecting the divine. The scholar James Henry Breasted, in his seminal 1933 work, The Dawn of Conscience, was one of the first to bring this connection to a wider audience, arguing that Egypt was the source of humanity's earliest moral awakening. He saw a direct line of inheritance, suggesting that Moses, raised as an Egyptian prince according to the biblical story, would have been intimately familiar with these texts. For Breasted, this wasn't a scandal. It was a testament to a shared human journey toward ethical consciousness. However, to simply label this as a case of cultural plagiarism is to miss the revolutionary transformation that takes place. The genius of the Ten Commandments lies not just in their content, but in their form, their context, and their theological framing. The Egyptian negative confession is, as its name implies, a negative. It is a list of things not done. It is profoundly individualistic, a personal declaration made by the deceased to save their own soul in the afterlife. The audience is a pantheon of 42 gods in the Hall of Two Truths. Its purpose is post-mortem justification. The Ten Commandments, by contrast, are overwhelmingly positive and imperative, even in their thou shalt not form. They are direct, authoritative commands from a single, transcendent God. They are not a checklist for the dead, but a covenant for the people. Their audience is not a panel of divine judges, but an entire community, a nation being forged in the crucible of the desert. Their purpose is to structure a righteous society on earth, here and now, defining the relationship between the individual and between the individual and their neighbor. This is the critical shift. The Israelite scribes and prophets, acting under what they understood as divine inspiration, took a set of widely recognized ethical principles and did something radical. First, they distilled them. From a sprawling list of 42 declarations, they focused on 10 core principles, creating a code that was concise, memorable, and portable, perfect for a nomadic people. Second, and most importantly, they ripped these ethics from their polytheistic, mythological soil and replanted them in the fertile new ground of monotheism. The reason one should not kill or steal is no longer simply to balance one's heart against Ma'at's 42 ideals for a better afterlife. The reason is because you are in a covenant relationship with Yahweh, the God who brought you out of Egypt. The first 4 commandments, which have no Egyptian parallel, establish this new theological context. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me.
This preamble changes everything. It reframes morality as a direct response to the nature and will of a single personal God. The ethical becomes an extension of the theological. This process is less like copying and more like a masterful adaptation. It's the story of how universal human wisdom about how to live together can be taken up, sanctified, and given a powerful new purpose within a specific religious narrative. It suggests a model of revelation where God works with the materials at hand, the language, the culture, the existing moral intuitions of a people, to communicate a deeper truth. But this raises a profound question that has challenged theologians for centuries. If the raw materials of this divine law are demonstrably human and historical, where does the human end and the divine begin? Does this evidence point toward a universal ethical consciousness that different cultures tap into? Or was this a deliberate and divinely guided act of theological re-engineering?
Extending that nuanced understanding of cultural influence on sacred law, we arrive at the heart of the theological challenge. For many believers, the idea that the Ten Commandments are not a bolt from the blue, a completely creation, can feel threatening. It can seem to diminish their authority, to tarnish their sanctity, and to reduce a moment of divine revelation to a mere act of historical borrowing. This fear is understandable. If the commandments are not unique, does that mean the covenant is not unique? Does it mean the God of Israel is just another deity in the ancient Near Eastern pantheon? But a deeper theological reflection reveals that this discovery, far from weakening faith, can actually enrich it, offering a more mature and historically grounded understanding of how the divine interacts with the human world. This is where we move beyond a simple who copied whom debate and into the profound territory of inspiration. Theologians often speak of two modes of divine communication: special revelation, like the specific prophecies of Isaiah or the life of Jesus, and general revelation, where God's truth is accessible to all people at all times through reason, conscience, and the natural world. From this perspective, the Egyptian ethical code, the cosmic order of Ma'at, can be seen as a powerful example of general revelation. It represents a deep, culturally ingrained understanding of justice and righteousness that arose from the human conscience, itself a gift from a creator. What happened at Sinai then was not the invention of morality, but its clarification, its codification, and its consecration. It was a moment of special revelation that took the scattered light of general revelation and focused it into a brilliant, defining beam. The Egyptologist Jan Osman provides a powerful framework for understanding this process with his concept of the Mosaic distinction. Osman argues that the true revolution of Israelite monotheism was not the ethical content itself, but the radical new distinction it introduced into the world, the distinction between true and false in religion. For the Egyptians, there were many gods, and all were part of the cosmic order. For the Israelites, there was one God, and all others were false idols. This distinction, Osman claims, changed history. The Ten Commandments are the chartered document of this distinction. Their purpose is not just to list moral rules, but to create a new kind of community, a holy people set apart by their exclusive loyalty to one God. The prohibitions against murder and theft are now grounded in the identity of this God. You do not steal from your neighbor because your neighbor, like you, is made in the image of the one true God and is a member of the same covenant. Morality is no longer about personal salvation in the afterlife. It's about building a just society on earth as a testament to the character of your God. This act of transformation is the miracle of Sinai. It's the divine alchemy of taking common ethical clay and firing it in the kiln of covenant, turning it into something new, durable, and world-changing. The blueprint may have been shared, but the building was entirely new. This perspective allows us to hold two seemingly contradictory ideas in perfect tension: that the Ten Commandments are a product of their historical time and place, deeply intertwined with the culture of the ancient Near East, and that they are a transcendent and divinely inspired text. It replaces a fragile faith that depends on historical isolation with a robust faith that sees God working within the messy, beautiful, and complex currents of human history.
For our modern interconnected world, this insight is more important than ever. It suggests that the foundations of our most cherished ethical codes may not be exclusive property, but part of a shared human heritage. It invites us to look for the echoes of Ma'at, the whispers of a universal conscience, in other cultures and traditions. It encourages a dialogue built not on proving who was first or who is unique, but on recognizing our common search for truth, balance, and a just way to live together. The journey from an Egyptian tomb to the foot of Mount Sinai reveals that revelation is not an argument against history, but a profound conversation with it.